Hello, everybody. I'm John Self, and welcome to Lunch and Learn, a replay edition from Tuesday, the 18th of March. This one is a pretty special one because it is designed to really help you guys deal with interviewing challenges. Answering unasked questions. And people said, gosh, that's an interesting, intriguing headline. Did you drink a lot of scotch and stay up late to come up with that? And no, the whole premise behind this education session today is that a lot of times you'll go into interviews and you have things you want to talk about, strengths that you have, and the client, for whatever reason, asks questions all the way around that and doesn't really touch on your strengths or doesn't touch on some of the issues that you would like to share. So this is a course or a coaching session to teach you how to leverage an unasked question and work in the things that you would have said had they asked that question. Leveraging your values, it's to add impact to your overall story. Now, the executive outlook for this, and I was trying to move down. If that thing is blocking your view, I apologize. But the long-term executive hiring is going to remain depressed. And this is important to know because when it comes to interviewing, this means you've got to really step up your game. Going to the game, whether your A- game or B+ game or even A game, is not probably going to be good enough when you're competing with dozens of others, highly skilled, well-educated people. And as companies focus on technology to reduce costs, as they certainly will, all of their protestations to the contrary, it is going to have an impact on the number of people hired. We already have a huge oversupply in the number of executives and managers looking for jobs, and we have fewer jobs at that level than we've had in a long time. Now, technology in recruiting is going to take over more of the talent tracking, candidate identification, and initial screening of potential applicants. Let's unpack that quickly. Talent tracking, companies now are going to start identifying people that they would like to hire into their company. And they're going to identify them on LinkedIn profiles and track them on their profiles and in other forms of media content. Why are they doing that? Well, let me share this story. Once upon a time, there was a company called GE Electric, and GE was a model company in the U.S. It was run by a real hard ass, Jack Welch, and they called him Neutron Jack because he believed in stripping away all of the parts of the company that were not profitable, parts of the company that were performing at an average level. He wanted to be number one or number two in the market, or we didn't need to have them in our company. Over time, he moderated his approach somewhat and became one of the most respected CEOs in the country latter 80s and into the 90s. And what they did, and the reason they were so successful, is Welch said that one of the most important things he did was hire people. He wanted to be sure he had the best possible leadership team, the best possible operating executives throughout the company. They had a war room off the executive suite that he and Henry Conradi, the chief human resources officer, used, and they tracked all of their executive teams across all aspects of the country, from manufacturing to appliances to electric lights to chemicals, that sort of thing. And like a football team creates a draft board, that's what they were doing. They were evaluating candidates each year, reviewing reports, finding out who they wanted to give extra help to, who needed some additional support, who needed to leave the company because their performance wasn't what it should be, and the people they would groom for higher level positions. And this was their talent war room. You're going to see companies, because talent will determine whether companies win or lose. And the talent proposition now is going to be more intense, more competitive, and more dehumanized, because on the front end, it's going to be done by computers who have the ability to screen lots of data in a short amount of time. So that's something that you have to look forward to. So you really have to be sure that your brand is really outstanding and that you are keeping your LinkedIn profile up to date. Now, getting to the interview table. This is going to be more challenging as more applicants compete for fewer still jobs. I mean, we're seeing a consolidation. We're seeing a subtraction in the number of management executive jobs. It is unclear whether that will ever return to pre-pandemic levels. Why? Because companies are looking for ways to expand a responsibility and do more with fewer people, beginning at the executive and management level. In job interviews in the future, to advance, applicants must excel It's not average or good will not be good enough. And so part of what we want to do today is provide you some foundational information to help you elevate your game. Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you today. If you don't know who I am, I'm John Self. I've spent 27 years in the executive search business. I worked all over the country in 4 different countries, 6 countries on 4 continents. And so I've done a lot of travel. I've interviewed nearly 9,000 executives all around the world. And I have a coaching practice. I'm more of a guide than a coach, a teacher, a guide, and someone who's been very successful at helping executives advance their careers and find the job of their dreams. Now, in order to be successful today, you've got to do something that's really important, and that is you start off with having a plan for your search. And when you do that, whether it's an individual interview or the whole search, and I recommend it be the whole search, but specifically for every interview you go to, what's your plan? What's your strategy? What points do you understand they're looking for? And what stories can you tell to help them understand that you're the right person for the job? So this is developing a plan, understanding what their real needs are, identifying your messaging themes, and then using something we call the core and categorical worksheet. And that is to break down the job by categories and then then break it down even further by strengths, weaknesses, your successes, your setbacks, dumb stuff you've done, great stuff you've done, and have some stories to illustrate the great stuff. Everybody's made mistakes, and you may sometimes go into an interview thinking, oh God, dear God, don't let them ask that question. Listen, the best example for that is have a prepared remark, have a prepared answer. They probably won't ever ask that question, but you'll go into the interview knowing I got this covered. So that's just a pro tip we can offer you here. Now, developing your plan. First of all, you have to understand what the employer is looking for. What kind of person are they looking for? What kind of values and results are they trying to achieve? Now, we have all this big kerfuffle about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But let's be honest, if you have a business in division and you're in a service industry and you're in a strongly Latino community, you need someone who understands that culture to be sure that you're meeting the needs of those customers. And that's not DEI. That's called smart business. I don't care what the idiot politicians think. Sorry about that, but I feel strongly about that. I don't think you should discriminate, but I also think you need to be smart. And some of the people talking about this are anything but smart on this subject. Number 2, you got to conduct research regarding related issues that are not addressed. Listen, if you hadn't noticed, employers rarely put anything in the job summary that would reflect any significant problems they're having, payroll, for example, significant losses, competitive challenges. They don't do that. They want to put something out there so that you won't be afraid to apply for the job and that they won't scare you off. Well, the truth is, if it's a good job, knowing all of this information on the front end is the least embarrassing time for everyone. So you've got to do your research. So in developing your plan, number 1, understand your employer, what they're looking for, people, values, and results. 2, you have to conduct your research regarding issues, related issues that are not addressed. I mean, you can find this stuff. Number 3, do not try to impress them with facts on your research. Impress them with understanding. What do I mean by that? Well, it means if you know that they've got a significant problem in accounts receivable because some of the research tells you and vendors that say, they're running 90 to 120 days, you don't want to go in there and tell them that because that'll upset them. They don't want to be told that they've got a problem. What they want is a solution. So you want to go in and say, a lot of hospitals are really struggling right now with supply chain issues, which is slowing down revenue, and days and accounts payable are creeping up. I have a record of being able to add value in that regard, and I can help you do that if that's a problem here. That's called trying to impress them with understanding and not tell them the problems they're having. Don't point out their fallacies. Number 4, select the 4 relevant strengths to emphasize. Now, you can't go in there and try to cover the whole waterfront. Look at the job summary, do your research, decide which of my 4 signature strengths do I really need to focus on. Now, everybody says, you talk about doing research all the time, but you really don't get into specifics. Well, let me tell you, a lot of career coaches, mentors, colleagues, CEOs, and other organizations, when we deal with somebody, what do we want to know? We want to know the big what. What do you want to do and why do you want to do it? And that's, you want to know The big what for those people is what are they looking for? They want to know your big what, why you're in this career, what you want to accomplish in your career, and you need to understand what their big why is in terms of needing a replacement. Now, the second point is context, and this is a treasure trove of value. You have industry directories, ACHE, which I was a member of for many, many years, and chapter presidents a couple of times. The ACHE has an online directory of the thousands and thousands of healthcare executives that belong to that organization. And it gives you a breakdown of where they worked in the past, where they are today, their telephone numbers, their email numbers. In other words, if you're looking for a job, this is golden information. If you lose your job, the last thing you want to give up is a professional association membership in which you lose access to the directory. So that's just something to keep in mind. But the industry directories. The other thing is LinkedIn. LinkedIn can show you not just where people are working or who some of the key executives are in a company, but they can show you their relationships with people you know, or you may even know them yourselves and you just don't remember. LinkedIn is a valuable tool. It's not necessarily a tool that's going to find you a job. It's a tool for research. It's a tool for branding. It's a tool to build your network, and you do that. Now, LinkedIn will not help you build relationships, and relationships are what is the most valuable thing. As I said earlier, the next source is vendors. Look for connections in the vendors, where they've been, who they may know. They may know people in the organization. They may be connected to people in the targeted organization. So you also want to look at people, places, and events. Again, knowing information and then trying to impress with them with specificity, that's not always a good idea because information changes. But you might say, you looked in the book and you go, holy cow, this guy was in my fraternity at SMU 4 years after I left. And so you don't want to go in there and point that out. Okay, you were in my fraternity because that smacks like that buys me some special attention. No, you go in there and say, one of my great times, good times in life, where I learned about who I was, I learned about relationships and dealing with conflicts, was when I served as the secretary for the Delta Chi whatever at SMU from this date to this date. Now you've told him you were there and you've not really, made him sound like you were trying to leverage him. That's being indirect. That's how to use information to show understanding, not to go in there and impress them because you've got specific dates of employment. That doesn't necessarily help you do anything. Finally, you want to have targeted organizations that if you're looking for information, you can look at SEC filings, you can look at if they're not-for-profit 1099 reports, public records, news reports, your contacts in LinkedIn.
It's
you keep
4
going
o'clock.
back to your contacts in LinkedIn. Now we get to talking specifically about how do you use this information. And the first thing, the pushback is always this. I don't like sales. I'm not in sales, and I don't want to be in sales. Just find me a job. Well, let me give you this bit of advice. 1 in 9 Americans are in sales. Guess what? So are the other 8. Everyone is in some level, shape, form, or fashion in the sales business. You're either selling your colleagues on a solution, you're selling your customers to buy your product, you're selling your board to approve an initiative, you're selling your team members to come up with a solution that we can build consensus around. It's all about sales. It's all about communication. It's all about conversion. And so everybody is either in sales, 1 in 9, and the other 8 are too. This is from Daniel Pink. He's a brilliant author, journalist, and speaker from Washington, D.C. And as we talk about interviewing, let's not forget, practice makes perfect. Now, when we talk about building up, skills in interviewing, there are going to be time after time after time in jobs that you pursue that you think they're going to ask certain questions, and they just don't. They may ask superficial stuff that you can hardly believe you're having to answer. Sometimes they don't ask the key issues related to the job opening that you could probably sell them very quickly on a solution. So if you can prepare for these 8 questions, they will help you reinforce your leadership brand. And if you really have good answers and you're really comfortable with them, you can take bits and pieces of these answers. When you're asked something else, you can then, and when it comes to this issue, I also believe this. So it's a way of they didn't ask that question, but you work in your answer with another question. So here's some themes that are pretty frequently. Number one, tell me about yourself. Now, that's the ubiquitous first question in most interviews. Let me just give you a clue. They're not asking for a summary of your resume. Number two, what are you passionate about? Okay, people sometimes that throws them because they want to talk about strategy and driving revenue and meeting expectations and all of that stuff. They don't want to talk about feelings and warmth and passion and things they really care about because sometimes they think, well, I need to look strong if I want to be a CEO. Well, I don't think so. And the next is, what is your mission in life? And finally, in this first four, why do you want to work here? Okay, so let's go and kind of apply some of these issues and talk about some answers you could do. Now, first of all, as I said a minute ago, on number one, do not summarize your career unless they specifically ask you to do that. That's like a cover letter on submitting online. Unless it specifically asks for it, don't do it. Okay, so do not summarize your career, but you do want to focus on your values, early jobs, lessons from your dad or mom, things that you learned that you are really memorable. And the better the story, the more memorable it will be for the person doing the interview. For example, one person, I coached him, he was really struggling. And I said, look, why are you in healthcare? And he said, because I love it. I care about it. I care about the people. I can't believe I'm this lucky. I said, okay, let's look at how you can answer that question. Start off by saying, I'm here today because I like what I see about your organization, first and foremost. I've also looked at your mission, vision, and values, and I hope it's not just a document gathering dust on the table because it aligns with how I believe, things should be done, and it will become part of how I manage this job if you hire me. So it is a privilege to work in healthcare, not a calling, not a job. That's a one-liner people will remember. So that's something they didn't ask you for. Now you're saying, tell me about yourself. I'm somebody who believes that this job is a privilege and that I would be very, very lucky to get it. Okay, it's a privilege, not a calling, or a privilege and a calling, not a job. I apologize. So number two. Tell me what you're passionate about. Well, I'm passionate about serving others. Okay, that's a good answer. It's a good start. Then you go mentoring, coaching, and engaging the team. Now we talk about your commitment to performance. And this, again, is stuff you add in to ensure improved results, to take care of the people in my care. Again, you're reinforcing your values, which is extremely important. They didn't ask you about that, but you've worked that into the answer. You're answering questions that you were not asked. I want to be an number three, what is your mission in life? Well, I want to be a COO. I mean, I hear that all the time, and then I don't hear anything else about it. So here's where you talk about, they say, well, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? You can say, well, I'm passionate about building a team building. I really believe in promoting professional growth and being accountable for the goals I promise to achieve. I'm enthused by complexity. Okay, that's a great answer. It's very focused, but you talk about that I believe in being accountable for the goals I promise to achieve. That's a very good point. That's a great phrase today because so many people don't necessarily want to be held accountable, and some people will get up early, stay up late, trying to avoid questions about accountability. Well, I don't want to say anything. They might hold me accountable. I got a perfect quote for you in just a minute. Number four, why do you want to work here? Well, you want to take their mission, vision, and values and incorporate it in a statement explaining how those values align with your own. And then this is something you bring back in, okay? It's not necessarily the answer, but it's something you want to tag with. The mission and values of your organization will be integral to my daily leadership style. So, now let's look at some potential answers. First of all, be succinct. My father was, a go-to exceptional retail baker. And, he always taught me about the value of hard work. And let me tell you something else he always taught me that is very important to me in my life. Always try to do the right thing, even when no one's looking. And I work at that every day. Okay. Number two, what is your leadership style? Well, meeting expectation is my contribution to the organization and to our customers. I do not drive results. Now, this is where you're taking something you weren't asked necessarily, and you're throwing in more of your values in a way that I think will appeal to most leaders. I do not drive results. I work to inspire results with a culture of sustained superior performance with clear expectations regarding performance. And if someone is not meeting that expectation, then I work with them and support them because my goal first is to take care of the people in my care and help them become more successful. Okay, people get recruited all the time and they don't work out. Like 40% of people recruited outside an organization, they're gone usually within 18 months. And why is that? Because there's not alignment on culture. The person comes in and was a total jerk. People want to hire people they like and trust. You're basically reaffirming here that you're likable and trustworthy. Now, number three, ultimately, where do you want to be? Again, you go in and the answer is my talents lie in operations rather than strategy, vision, and external relationships. Professionally, I would like to become a COO. I also want to be a good husband and a father and achieve healthy, productive work-life harmony. Okay, that's a great answer. And I think, it talks about your accountability, your desire to be accountable. It also talks about your values and that they're bringing somebody into the company family that they feel like they can identify with and trust. Number four, how do you deal with problems? Okay, one answer is I focus on communication and values. Okay, now you can answer maybe a question on how do you do communication. I listen to understand, which means I do not assume the answer. It is not about me. It is not about me getting everybody to buy the answer that I want them to buy. It's about finding what works, what's a consensus among the team, what will benefit the organization the best. It's about what's best for the organization. So there you take a regular question, and again, you reaffirm your values for the organization and the fact that you're someone they can trust. Now, let's break down the job by category. In every job, there's 5, 6, sometimes 7 elements, but let's just take the basics. First of all, financial management. That's budget, profit, loss, etc. The financial operating reports every month. Did you stay in line with budget? Did you overspend with your expenses? Human capital. Now that's employee engagement, employee satisfaction. What's the rate of turnover? What's the level of customer satisfaction? Number 3, marketing. Now, this is sales and revenue growth, but even if you're an internal department like marketing or some other department that serves the other pieces of the organization, like the printing shop or that sort of thing, you have to worry about customer service and the customer relationship, and that you have marketing responsibility, even if it's in your own organization. Next is customer satisfaction. If you're selling to internal customers, it's smart to be sure that they're satisfied by the service you give, especially if there's going to be a layoff, because you want to be one of the people that they realize they can't work without or live without. So that's part of the customer satisfaction angle, and that's number 4. Number 5 is governance. Now, this is not reporting to a board, although that is possible. That's what it could mean. It also is about reporting relationships for who else you report to. Your vice president, your general manager, your executive vice president, the COO, that sort of thing. And when you get ready to focus on an interview or a job, always complete the core and categorical worksheet. I guarantee you this will make you a better interview. If you do this, do it thoughtfully and study it, you will be more secure, you will be more confident, and you'll be more self-aware. And when you do that, you're more capable of hitting the ball out of the park. That's what the forum looks like. You can download it for free from our website at johngself.com. Click the button on the right side that talks about membership, and it'll take you to the download icon on that page. Now, let's talk about how the core and categorical worksheet works. Okay, take the categories we just went over. Now you take your value brand statement. If you don't have one, you need to get one. Okay. This is your statement of what value you can bring to the organization. The elevator speech, that term and that whole concept is out of date. And so what everybody's interested in now is not where you worked, where you've been, where you went to school. And you have to do that. That's all important. It's all about what you can do for me. What can you do for the organization? What value will we, if we hire you, what value will you generate for this company? So you want, in order to start pulling all this together, you want to think about the strengths for each category and that categories of the job list. So you have strengths and weaknesses for each one of those categories. Also, pull together some successes with examples for each of those categories, each one. Also, look at weaknesses and prepare to pivot. We all have weaknesses, and recruiters are going to ask you about it. Why? Because it's a signature of your emotional intelligence. If you get really pushy and pussy about having to talk about your weaknesses, you're basically going to say you're an egotistical person. You're not the kind of person we want in this company. We want people who know they make mistakes and who will learn from them and who will then use them to teach other people. And you can't be a great mentor if you're not somebody who can admit their own weaknesses. Then but when you talk about a weakness, I'm too verbal, okay? So when I talk about this, I always throw in some self-deprecating humor. My father said I could chat up a brick wall, but I realized it was a big problem after a couple of bosses sat me down and said, you're great at what you do. I've never seen anybody better, but you could be better, and we expect you to be better. It was embarrassing. It was also a rush because I realized I'm good at something, and they cared enough about me to sit me down to tell me how I was screwing up. And now I cleaned that story up, but I've used that several times, and I found that the hiring manager was nodding his head, and I've been very successful with it. I've said that sometimes when I'm talking to organizations about management services or some other product. Now, you have to be prepared to pivot. Don't be, superficial on the weakness. Don't come up with something that's bogus. Be a real weakness, but then pivot quickly. Don't get caught up in the facts and all the doom and gloom. Pivot. Say, yes, I do this, but let me tell you what I've learned and how to deal with that. One guy said when I asked him in an interview that I was recording for the board, I said, tell me about your weaknesses. And he looked at the camera and smiled. And he said, maybe we better call my wife. And when the board members saw the video replay of this interview, they were all kind of doing this, and then they all laughed, okay? The wives knowingly, the husbands nervously, but they all began to link in because that moment of self-deprecating humor, they decided something. They liked him. And they continued to like him through to the point, unfortunately, when he withdrew to take a better job someplace else. But, that was how he was able to win over a board. Likability and trust are two major triggers in making a favorable decision for your candidacy. Okay, now, if the other thing you prepare for is you think about this job, and you may have interviewed people for a similar job in the past. What questions would you ask you, tough questions, if you were interviewing for the job, if you were being interviewed for the job, or if you were interviewing somebody else for the job, what questions would you ask? And you'll be surprised. You may have, if you write down 15 or 20 of them, you may find 4 or 5 of them in your list that you get asked in an interview. Now, so what happens to the others? You're still prepared. That still fuels self-confidence, and self-confidence promotes self-awareness, and self-awareness just absolutely is the jet fuel for a great job in interviewing. Now, we've also made some big mistakes in our lives. Fortunately, mine have not been that big, although some of them have been certainly embarrassing. We all fear, a lot of people fear, having that oh my God question, something we did that was so horrifically stupid. We've learned a lesson. We got beaten within an inch of our lives. We may have even lost a job. And it may have got known to the trade press, and it gets passed around to the sites like Becker's or some of those others in other industries. The truth is, when you make that kind of mistake, unless it's a felony or unless there's something that was really, really abnormal about it, like we don't want to talk about that here, but if there was something to that, then you may not have any recourse, not in short term. But if it was just that you missed a read or you offended someone in a meeting because you really believe passionately about what you were saying, that you shouldn't have come down hard on, but you did, and it cost you, listen, this is not the end of the world. So what you need to do is sit down and have a really good, succinct answer to that question. It's only going to be asked 2 or 3 out of 10 or 15 times. But the fact that you've got that information, the fact that you prepared for it, takes the edge off the table. And so that's really, really important. Now, once you get all of this information in the center column sorted, then you want to look at the right column and you want to get stories. Now, what are stories? Stories are examples of success. Who was involved, how you did it, some of the drama. Okay? Make it, you can't just go in, show up, and try to recall that stuff effectively. Think about how you want to retell a story for a specific category. Okay? And then think about, is this story really the best for the client? Is this have the most relevance for this client? And if it does, then you want to continue to develop it. Then you want also in your stories, you want to have some that remind them of your value brand statement. That's the core. You're always trying to connect people back with that explanation. And then the last thing you do when you get your stories is you rehearse. You rehearse, you rehearse, you rehearse some more. You ask somebody to listen ask you some questions, that somebody who knows how to ask questions and knows what good answers would be, a mock interview, if you will, and get feedback and then rehearse some more. Because the people who go in and are really well prepared do better than those who aren't prepared at all. And recruiters say one of their biggest frustrations with job applicants today is that they come in and they're not prepared. So people say, well, I don't really want to do that every job. I mean, you have to do it every job because not every job is the same. And the issues are going to be different. And the examples you used are going to be different. So you need to put it down in writing. It's very, very important. Governance and complete the core form. And then, again, that's where it is. And you can then download it and use it, and you keep printing it and keep using it. It will make you a better interview. Now, people say, well, how do you get all this information in addition to your research? Well, let me tell you about interviewing. It's a combination of answering, asking, and listening. The prospective employer may ask you a question and you answer. And then that may stimulate something you want to ask. Well, tell me a little bit more about this. What kind of consequences or what kind of implication has this had on continuing operations or on turnover? That's information that you would be expected to ask. And you want to be sure you're asking plenty of questions. The more information you get in those Q&A sessions, the more valuable and the more effective you're going to be when you do your closing statement. You want to listen very carefully, and you want to listen to understand. Again, using research indirectly. In other words, don't say, well, your organization has this, and this problem. That will piss them off, okay, at the very least. And if it's not up to date, it'll make you look like an idiot. So talk about stuff in a way of saying, I understand a lot of hospitals are having problems, and you may not be there, but here's how I would approach it. Listen to understand when you ask those questions. Be sure that you are getting information that you can address, and then use an indirect approach. Many organizations were dealing with this kind of challenge. Or maybe with an enterprise turnover rate of 24%, I was able to reduce, X number, your turnover cost by this much money. And you want to be sure if you're going to talk about specific things, you got to be 1,000% certain it's current information and applies to this organization. And it's so public that nobody's going to feel like somebody talked to you that shouldn't have talked. So you want to have good information, be general, be empathetic. You work from a point of understanding, not that you're in there trying to impress them with how much inside information you have, because that seldom impresses. And always, always, as you get this information and you're processing it on the fly, weave a narrative of your strengths and with assurances of how you will solve the problem. Okay? Extremely important. Now, I said earlier this was a possibility, and here it is. And this actually happened. This guy had everything they were looking for, and he didn't get the job. And when I started kind of putting him under the total heavyweight questioning, he admitted that he did not tell the people that he could solve their problems, even though he had done it two or three other times in other organizations. After all, he said, it's in my resume. You'd think that they'd have read it. They should have read it. Okay? That's an idiotic thing to say. Don't ever assume that the prospective employer is going to read and understand your resume completely. He had the experience. He just didn't want to get out there and say he could take care of the problem because he didn't want to be held accountable. And there are a lot of people in a lot of industries that are that way. They don't want to be held accountable. If they get out there too far and say, yes, you can depend on me, oh my God, I'm going to have to do something because they're going to hold me accountable. Okay? Please don't shy away from that. If you're a confident person, don't be arrogant, don't be boastful, be quiet, be authentic, be informed, and let them know that you're working with understanding, that you understand the problems and you understand how to best solve them. I hope I never hear that question again from a hospital CEO. George Clooney, who was Hollywood royalty when he first got started, had a hell of a tough time finding a job. Now, his mom and dad and his aunt Rosemary Clooney, they were all royalty. Everybody knew who they were. It was sort of, people were kind of surprised that Clooney could not, get a job as easily as other people. And a lot of times he said, if you don't have a job, it's the same thing. You're playing with house money. There's a 50-50 chance that you're going to fail. If you walk in, from the minute you walk in, if you don't have a job to the minute you walk out, you don't have a job. Nothing changed. So you don't want to really waste your time going to interviews that you hadn't prepared for, hadn't deeply thought about, because you're going to have to explain to them why you can help them. The only thing that can be different, Clooney argues, is that you get the job, period. Now, if you think of it any other way, if you think of it this way, you're going to take the pressure off, okay? A lot of people build up so much pressure about not making a mistake that they absolutely screw themselves up. And he said, when you take the pressure off yourself, the worst thing that possibly could happen is that I don't get the job that I don't already have. He said, I began to realize that what absolutely made a difference for me was that I didn't go in asking for a job. Okay. I didn't go in there talking about all my great accomplishments and then letting them figure it all out. I loved auditioning, he said, but I was very bad at it for a long period of time. Well, a lot of people are very bad at interviewing and they don't want to admit it. But I've sat through 9,000 at least, and I can tell you that that's very, very true. Finally, Clooney said, every time I went for an audition, I thought, God, I hope I don't screw this up. God, I've said that myself. And the truth is, now having sat on the other side of the couch, the producer and the director, while this person's going, oh, God, I hope I don't screw this up, the producer and director are saying, God, I hope this person is the savior. I hope this person fixes our problem. So understand, when you interview, you're interviewing to be part of the solution, not the problem. As we prepare to close today, let's talk about some takeaways. Finding a job is tough, but the competition is intense. Your takeaways. Well, first of all, gone are the days when we hope for the best, and that was how we approached interviewing. We're just going to go in there and hope for the best, okay? First and foremost, this is at the macro level. You got to believe in yourself. You're going to take a beating. You're going to be discouraged, but you got to keep believing in yourself. The second thing is you're going to have to do some things you don't want to do to be successful in interviewing. So use Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. If you know you need to get up and do something, don't wait. If you're not up and moving by 5 seconds, you won't do it. And you want to stay positive. It's a grueling, tough, it can be just so heartbreaking. But you have to stay positive because you can't afford to go into interviews and have the hangdog look around your face because you won't get the job. People want to hire people who are confident, who are kind, who are, upbeat, people they can trust. Okay? Now, again, the takeaway, always have an interview strategy. You want to have a career strategy, you want to have a job search strategy, and then you want to have an individual interview strategy for the specific job. Really key. Understand what the problem the employer is trying to solve. And again, there are myriads of resources, but you got to do the homework. You can't just hope to get away with it. And then use the core and categorical form. I think you'll find that it's just an excellent tool to help you improve your interviewing strategy. Now, as we finish out here, please close the deal. Okay, get a closing statement. A lot of that now it can be around. You want to have a statement that really conveys emotion. You want to have a statement that summarizes the positives that you said, the positives that you feel most reflect the needs of this organization, things that you know they will agree with. And you want to draw all that together and you want to say at the end, this is a job I'm really interested in, and I would be very honored to be able to come and be your CEO. And, then you want to add something like, if you've got some real challenges, but this is all stuff I've handled before. It can be frustrating. You can take some lumps and bumps, but I've been successful in the past. And if you hire me, I assure you I'll be successful for your organization. Excuse me. I want to thank you for coming today and watching this video. We provide group coaching twice a week. Our next session will be on Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time. We'll be putting out a publication tonight or early in the morning about the subject matter of that presentation, but we hope you'll join us then. Thank you so much. And we hope you'll join us 4 p.m. Thursday here on YouTube for office hours. And you can also find me on Substack, Guiding Your Career Report, information and insight to help you advance your management career. It's https://johngcellsubstack.com. We produce a 5-day-a-week newsletter, and we hope you'll join us over there.